Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your week. I know I am loaded up, ready to go. Plenty of topics for today. Shane Steichen comments have sent Colts Twitter just into an absolute tailspin. Yesterday was quite the day over on Twitter for Colts fans. I still think that they have a decent shot at the playoffs. 1040, I'm going to give you the most accurate 10 best teams in the NFL list at 11 o'clock. Destin Adams of A to Z Sports, he covers the Colts. He's going to join me as well. So absolutely loaded show today. Got just a lot going on. But let's start with the thing that made people go absolutely nuts on Twitter yesterday. Shane Steichen doing his, his weekly Tuesday press conference. He's getting asked all these questions. And yeah, he got asked a question yesterday about whether or not Anthony Richardson would be the starter. And here's what he had to say.
Is he starting Sunday?
We are evaluating everything.
They're evaluating everything, which led to everybody going absolutely crazy, right? Oh, they're going to pull him. They're going to bench him. They're going to start Flacco. People just going absolutely nuts, and rightfully so. Okay, usually when Shane Steichen is asked this question, his response is, Anthony Richardson is our starting quarterback. Every time he has been asked that question up until yesterday, the response has been the same. Anthony Richardson is our guy. We're going to play him. That's who we're going to play. Yesterday, though, they're evaluating everything. Okay? And this has led to the two different camps of Colts fans reacting very differently. Joe Flacco fans are pumped. They're like, let's go, 39-year-old quarterback who can't move. Let's put that guy in. They're all excited. They're throwing parades. They're throwing parties. Meanwhile, the Anthony Richardson people are freaking out.
Everyone run for cover! That's the West! Mayday! Mayday! Code red, duck and cover! The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
That was Anthony Richardson fans everywhere yesterday, just going absolutely crazy. No, you can't give up on him. He's only started 10 games. He's only finished like 6 of them. The tape is better than the numbers, and people just going absolutely crazy. And it's so just kind of funny, just sitting back and watching everyone go nuts. And thankfully, and part of why people are going nuts is because they just see that. Okay, they just see the quote from Shane Steichen saying that they're evaluating everything after being asked whether or not Anthony Richardson was going to start on Sunday. Thankfully, one of the Colts reporters, Chappie, actually, asked for clarification on what Shane Steichen means when he says they're evaluating everything.
I don't want to read too much into what you said, but when you said you're evaluating everything on him starting Sunday, is there a question that he starts Sunday in Minnesota?
Like I said, we're evaluating everything, not just the quarterback, everything. Like, we all got to be better. I mean, we're sitting at 500. And, I think, looking back at what we've done, there's a whole bunch of areas that we can improve on. I'm not just talking about the quarterback. I'm talking about everything. And we got to be better moving forward.
Yeah, he's exactly right. Colts head coach Shane Steichen right there talking about, what it means to evaluate everything. And it truly sounds like they're evaluating everything. Okay, they're obviously evaluating the quarterback spot because I'm an Anthony Richardson believer. I think that with given time, he could turn into a really good quarterback. I don't think that there's any sort of future available with Joe Flacco whatsoever. But everything needs to be evaluated for this Colts offense, not just Anthony Richardson. Okay, like they need to evaluate the wide receivers, right? Because even though Anthony Richardson was 10 of 32 on Sunday, that stat line would have looked a lot better if receivers had done their jobs. Okay, they're evaluating the offensive line and their ability to block because let's be honest, the offensive line wasn't very good. It wasn't, right? Anthony Richardson was pressured on 64% of his dropbacks on Sunday. The offensive line clearly needs to be reevaluated because they weren't very good on Sunday, right? And they're going to hopefully, I pray that they evaluate the play calling, right? Because whether you're a fan of Anthony Richardson or not, whether you think Joe Flacco should be the starter, whether you think Anthony Richardson should be the starter, I think we can all agree. I think you and I can both agree that the play calling on Sunday was absolutely atrocious. When you're throwing more passes 20 or more yards down the field than you are throwing passes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, that is an issue no matter who is playing quarterback for you. Okay, so hopefully they reevaluate the play calling, because when we look at that Colts loss on Sunday, that is why they lost. Okay, they only lost by 3. Right? Like, the game was close. They had opportunities. And if the play calling had been a little bit better, if Shane Steichen had done a better job of giving Anthony Richardson some easy throws, then the outcome of that game is probably a little bit different. From a personnel standpoint, I know that Shane Steichen says that they're evaluating everything. I don't think much is going to change because we're 8 weeks into the season. And, there's not exactly a bunch of great free agents out there that you can just go and pick up. That's not an option. Like, you have what you have. And I just find it very hard to believe that someone that the Colts deemed as a starting caliber player on their roster is all of a sudden just not going to be that anymore. Right? Like, I find that hard to believe. And what I think is really happening here, Shane Steichen is just trying to get the attention of his team because, yes, Anthony Richardson's numbers weren't very good on Sunday. Okay, but no one else on the offense really played well either, with the exception of Josh Downs and Jonathan Taylor. Those were the only 2 players on the Colts offense yesterday that actually had success and actually did their jobs. Okay, so this feels like Shane Steichen sending a bit of a message, not only to Anthony Richardson, but everyone else on the team, because everyone else on this offense needs to be better. Receivers need to catch the football. Offensive linemen need to pass protect better, and so on. And Shane Steichen needs to do a better job of calling plays. Okay, so I don't think we're going to see any change in the personnel whatsoever. Maybe we see Flacco. I'm going to address that here in like 2 minutes. Where I do think we're going to see a change, no matter who plays quarterback, no matter who plays wide receiver, no matter who plays left tackle. Bernard Raymond has concussion symptoms, so he's probably not going to play on Sunday night. One thing I do think that we're going to see change, no matter who plays, I think we're going to see a change in the play calling. Okay, I was watching Monday Night Football last night. Great game, I guess. I don't know, watching the Steelers and the Giants play isn't exactly my favorite thing to do. But anyway, I was listening to Jason Kelce before the game. And, they were talking about Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson and the whole Anthony Richardson pulling himself out for a play debacle and all that kind of stuff. And in it, they start talking about Shane Steichen, and Jason Kelce called Shane Steichen the best play caller he's ever played for. Okay? So if we see any major adjustment, it's going to be in play calling, because Shane Steichen is not dumb. Okay? He's not. He's going to go back. He's going to watch the film, and he's going to pick up on things that you and I probably won't, and he's going to make tweaks in how he calls the plays, because Shane Steichen's not dumb. They aren't scoring points. They aren't consistently moving the football down the field. No matter who plays quarterback on Sunday, no matter who plays on the offensive line, no matter who plays wide receiver, we are going to see some sort of change in how the plays are being called. Now to Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson, because I know that this is the big topic. I know there's a portion of people out there who think that Joe Flacco's great because he tore the Jaguars up. Great. But let's just be truthful about this. The Colts are not that much better with Joe Flacco at quarterback. Are they better? Sure. Undoubtedly. Joe Flacco is a better quarterback right now than Anthony Richardson is. Okay? But the difference is not that much. And I do not think he's going to be the starting quarterback Sunday night against the Vikings. I expect to see Anthony Richardson. And this quote from Shane Steichen when he was asked about developing young quarterbacks is why I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson and not Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, right? I mean, there's certain guys that, throw guys into the fire early, and there's other guys that let them sit back and watch. So obviously playing, like I've said before, the more you play, the more you learn. at that position. But is there benefit sometimes in sitting back and watching? Yeah, of course there is. And so those are just, conversations that go on in the offseason and constantly going on through NFL football teams.
Shane Steichen right there talking about the advantages of playing versus sitting a young quarterback. He says it point blank. You get better by playing the position. He said it point blank. That is what he said. And because of that, if this is Shane Steichen's call, they're going to play Anthony Richardson. Okay? Shane Steichen is clearly a believer in playing young quarterbacks early. That is why Anthony Richardson was the starter last year until he got hurt. And it's why he hasn't been pulled out yet this year. Okay? If it is really Shane Steichen's call and he gets to decide who plays quarterback, it'll be Anthony Richardson. If Chris Ballard is the one deciding who's going to play quarterback on Sunday, it will be Anthony Richardson, because Chris Ballard is the guy who drafted Anthony Richardson, and he wants him to develop so that he can be right and he can parade around and be like, I told y'all so. Okay? The only way we see Joe Flacco on Sunday is if Jim Irsay himself, which is very possible, is if Jim Irsay himself inserts himself and says, hey, Shane Steichen, I'm sick and tired of watching Anthony Richardson. I want to see Joe Flacco instead. I believe that's the only way we see Joe Flacco on Sunday, which will be really frustrating because after the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson, our guy, Jim Irsay, made it pretty clear that people needed to be patient, talked about how raw Richardson is and how we have to be patient. And it's just going to be really annoying for me if Jim Irsay gave us a lecture on, hey, we need to be patient, and then he himself was impatient on the process. Okay? I think we see Richardson, but I'm not dumb enough to say there's no way we see Flacco, because I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Jim Irsay came down and was like, hey, play Joe Flacco. I'm tired of watching this. And no matter who plays quarterback, Colts fans are going to be upset. Okay? Like if we see Joe Flacco, people that want to see Richardson and want to see if he can develop, those people are going to be upset. And, if the people who want to win right now, like if they see Richardson, they're going to be upset that it's not Joe Flacco. But if we're truthful about Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco and the ceilings for these teams, the ceiling for the Colts playing Anthony Richardson is 9-8 or 10-7. That is the absolute best finish for the Colts this year when looking at the schedule and who they're going to play. The ceiling for the Colts with Joe Flacco is 9-8 or 10-7. Okay, once again, the difference between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson is not as big as everybody thinks. There is a major difference, though, between those ceilings being reached by these two different quarterbacks. Okay, if the Colts decide to roll with Joe Flacco the rest of the way, and let's say that they play to the best of their abilities and they go 10-7 and they make the wild card, and then they get their doors blown off in the first round by the Ravens or the Bills or the Chiefs, because that's probably who they're going to wind up playing, then great. Congratulations. You went 10-7 and you lost in the first round. Who cares? The answer is nobody, right? And then once you play Joe Flacco, the chances of them trading away Anthony Richardson for like a 6th round pick that Chris Ballard will probably use on a safety and be like, that's a steal. Like all that just goes up. Right. And then 3 years from now, we're right back where we were 3, 4, and 5 years ago. Colts fans looking around being like, why don't we have a young quarterback? Why isn't Chris Ballard drafting a quarterback? That's where we're going to wind up, because consistently going 9-8 and 10-7 means you're drafting somewhere between the 15th and 23rd pick. Right. And guess what? You're not drafting with the 15th or 23rd pick or anywhere in between. You're not drafting a franchise quarterback. It isn't happening, right? And so we'll be back to the revolving door of Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz, right? And then eventually the Colts will miss, kind of like what they did with Matt Ryan, and then they'll be bad again, okay? Do you know why the Commanders are good this year? It's because they went 4-13 last year. And because they went 4-13, they had the opportunity to draft Jaden Daniels. The best way forward for the Colts is Anthony Richardson, because if he figures things out, Okay, like we're acting like this guy's played just a million games. He's started 10 games in the NFL. He's only started and finished like 6 or 7. That's just not a big enough sample size. It's not. Okay? And so the best way forward for the Colts is to play Richardson because he's either going to get better, okay? And if he does get better and the Colts reach that 9-8 or 10-7 and they make the playoffs, then they know that they've potentially found the future of their franchise in Anthony Richardson. Okay, so either that's going to happen or he's not going to get better. He's going to continue to be bad. And guess what happens when you're bad? You get to draft another guy that could potentially be your franchise quarterback. That's just how the NFL works. Okay, if you consistently go 9-8-ish, Colts fans, you should know this. This is where the Colts have lived for the past 5 years, with the exception of the Matt Ryan year. If you consistently go 9-8-ish, then you're not drafting a potential franchise quarterback. It's not happening. Do you know who you get between the 15th and 23rd pick? Kenny Pickett, who's the third string quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles now. Okay, this is the reality of the NFL. It's not fun going 4-13, but it gives you an opportunity to actually build a winner because you have a real opportunity to draft a legitimate franchise quarterback. The Commanders are going to be good for the next decade because they drafted Jaden Daniels. That is the reality of the situation, okay? Anthony Richardson should be the starting quarterback on Sunday. I think that's who we're going to see. If we see Joe Flacco, it's probably because Jim Irsay decided to get into the mix and said, hey, I'm done watching Richardson. I want to see Joe Flacco. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, people are outraged about Anthony Richardson pulling himself out of the game on Sunday. Ryan Kelly, Colts starting center, was asked about it. I'm going to play his response for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope your week is off to a good start. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. A lot of stuff to get to today. Colts, Indiana, World Series, Dodgers up 3-0. Freddie Freeman swinging it well right now. Good for the Dodgers. I don't think anyone likes the Yankees. Anyway, Destin Adams of ADC Sports, he covers the Colts for them. He's set to join me at 11. Ryan Kelly, the 30-year-old starting center for the Indianapolis Colts, needs to be extended. Okay, I still hold the opinion that Anthony Richardson pulling himself out of the game on Sunday wasn't the end of the world like everyone thinks that it was. He pulled himself out on 3rd and goal from the Houston 23-yard line. They weren't going to throw the ball there, okay? So should he have done it? Absolutely not. But is it the end of the world? No. The reality is, if the Colts had won on Sunday, no one would care about it. If Anthony Richardson had played well on Sunday, no one would care about it. The reality is he's been struggling, and they lost, and people are looking for each and every excuse possible to justify why he shouldn't play. Okay? That's the reality of what's happening right now with Anthony Richardson and the whole him pulling himself off the field. Should he have done it? Absolutely not. But he did, and people got upset, which leads to questions for Anthony Richardson's teammates. Ryan Kelly was asked about Anthony Richardson pulling himself off the field during the game on Sunday, and here's what starting center Ryan Kelly had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we had a conversation about it, and, I think he knows it's not the standard that, that he needs to play up to and the rest of the team holds him to. And I'll kind of leave the conversation that we had at that. But, I'm sure he's going to take some criticism for that. It's just rightfully so, right? I mean, that's a tough look. But I'm also, he's out there giving it all for his team, right? And it's not always pretty sometimes, an offensive lull the last couple of weeks, just having a hard time getting going at times. I thought we did some good things in the game, but if anybody ever questions how hard he plays, I don't think that that's the case. I mean, if you watch his film, surely, we didn't move the ball effectively at times, but I mean, he's giving it everything for his teammates. So he's young. I'm sure it's a learning moment for him. And leave it at that.
Ryan Kelly, Colts starting center right there, talking about Anthony Richardson pulling himself out on that 3rd and goal play. So, look, it's good that Ryan Kelly had that conversation with Anthony Richardson, and that is why he needs to be extended. Anthony Richardson is 22 years old, okay? The dude's a kid. He's the age of most people that are still in college. There are multiple starting quarterbacks in the world of college football that are older than Anthony Richardson. And when you have a quarterback that's this young, it is important to have adults in the room. Look, I don't know Tanner Bortolini, but he's, a rookie center out of Wisconsin. When he's had opportunities to play, he's played well. But Ryan Kelly, a 10-year veteran, having that conversation with Anthony Richardson carries way more weight than Tanner Bortolini, a rookie out of Wisconsin, having that conversation with Anthony Richardson. When you have a young quarterback like the Colts currently have, look, Anthony Richardson's younger than I am. Like, that's insane. You have to have adults in the room. You have to have older veteran guys to help them along. Okay? Every 22-year-old, every single one, is going to make mistakes. And they're probably going to make big ones like Anthony Richardson did on Sunday. Right? Look, I'll never forget, when I was working here, where I work now, I was 22 years old. I was doing a bunch of grunt work. I didn't like it. It wasn't fun. And I was in charge of weekend programming. And I made a really big mistake one day. It was bad. Okay. And I almost cost the company and the cluster a whole lot of money. And usually when you do that, you get fired. Thankfully, I had adults in the building who'd been in radio a long time, like how Ryan Kelly has played in the NFL for a long time, who were able to come alongside me and say, hey, you did this wrong. Don't do it again. Right? And guess what? From there, it didn't happen again. Okay? It is important to have adults in the room when you have a young quarterback, when you have a young person in general. Okay? So sure, Tanner Bortolini might be better than Ryan Kelly. That's very possible. But here's the thing. Tanner Bortolini can be the starter. Like that's allowed. Okay? Ryan Kelly needs to be extended because it is important to have an adult in the room. Okay? And that is what Ryan Kelly is. He's the oldest guy on the offense. Like I said, 30, been in the league for over a decade. Okay? And centers and quarterbacks, like they have real relationships, right? Because they have to talk about protections and all these things. And, it's probably important to have, a good relationship with the guy who's running his hands up under your butt for an hour, right? And so, that's who Ryan Kelly is to Anthony Richardson. He is a guy who can point out the mistakes that Anthony Richardson makes, whether they're mental, physical, or whatever you want to call that mistake that he made on Sunday, right? And he can point them out and be like, hey, man, you better fix this, right? Because that's the kind of guy that Ryan Kelly is. He's a legitimate veteran in the NFL who's been around a long time, and he can help with the developments, maybe not in terms of playing the quarterback position, but of being a leader and acting the right way. He can help in that area of development with Anthony Richardson because he is still clearly very much a kid. The dude's 22 years old, okay? The people who watch on YouTube, which you should totally watch on YouTube, by the way, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe and be part of the chat. Like, the people watching YouTube, like, they call me a kid, and I'm older than Anthony Richardson. Like, of course, the guy's going to make mistakes. The Colts just need to ensure that they don't happen again. And the best way to do that is to have players around him who hold him accountable. And Ryan Kelly is going to do that, as he made very clear in that statement, by having a conversation with him. Because, look, when your boss gets onto you or when your head coach gets onto you, like, it obviously carries weight. But when your teammates say something to you, that's when you know that you did something incredibly wrong, like Anthony Richardson did on Sunday when he pulled himself out. Ryan Kelly needs to be extended because he's the adult in that locker room, and you have to have them. Here's the other thing with the Colts. They're 4-4, and people are going crazy. 4-4. Season's over. Season's over. Chalk it up. Whoop. Which, if the season's over, then they definitely need to play Anthony Richardson to figure out whether or not he's the guy. Okay, so if you hold the opinion that the season's over then, and you want to play Joe Flacco, you don't get it, but that's fine. Okay, now after the loss on Sunday, the Colts aren't going to win this division unless the Houston Texans have an incredible collapse. Okay, like they'd have to collapse in a big way, and that's probably not going to happen. Okay, but the playoffs are undoubtedly still in play for the Colts. 9-8 is undoubtedly on the board. 10-7 is still, like, that's still on the board for the Colts, whether they play Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. Okay? The Colts can lose to the Vikings, Bills, and Lions, their three toughest games left, and still make the playoffs. Okay? If they lose those three and they win every other one, they're 10-7. That's the reality of it. And 10-7, probably 9-8, is going to make the playoffs this year. Okay? And look, outside of the Vikings, Bills, and Lions, every other game feels winnable. Okay? The Chargers, the Colts, and the Broncos are the three teams that are going to be competing for those last two spots. Okay? When you look at the playoff picture, like those are the three. Right? The Steelers and the Ravens, whoever comes in second place in that division is going to grab the 5 seed, and then the Chargers, Broncos, and Colts are all three going to battle it out for those last two spots. Okay? Here's the thing. The Chargers and the Broncos are in the same division, so those two teams are going to have to play each other again, and they both have tough games ahead, just like the Colts do. The Chargers have to play the Chiefs again. They've got the Ravens on the schedule. Like, they've got some tough games coming up. The Broncos have to play the Chiefs, not once, but twice. Like, of these three teams, like, there isn't a schedule that jumps out as significantly harder or easier. The thing, though, is the Chargers and Broncos have games that jump out as that's definitely a loss. Like, I don't expect for the Broncos, as good as they've been this year, to beat the Chiefs. Like, I don't. That defense is too good with a young rookie quarterback. I don't expect for the Chargers to beat the Ravens or the Chiefs. Okay. And whereas, like, for the Colts, like, if they won on Sunday, like, I wouldn't really be surprised. If they beat the Bills at home, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. In that Lions game, I would be surprised if they won that one because that team looks incredible right now, right? But the truth is, like, the Colts have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. When you look at the Chargers and you look at the Broncos, I think the Colts are better. Okay, like the Chargers have really struggled in spots throughout the year because even though they have Justin Herbert, who's a great young quarterback, he's, no one's talking about him this year, even though he's playing pretty well. And even though I think Jim Harbaugh is a good football coach, there's a major lack of weapons for the Chargers. Like, they just don't have the guys on the outside to consistently throw the football and score touchdowns. That's been a major issue for the Chargers this year. And then you look at the Broncos and you look at Bo Nix and you look at this young rookie quarterback. The dude has put up some absolute stinkers against the better opponents that he's faced this year. Meanwhile, you look at the Colts, and we can be upset at 4-4, but they've been in every game that they've played. Okay, they have been. Like, there's a real world where the Colts are 6-2. There's also a real world where the Colts are 2-6. Okay, and because of that, because the Colts have this ability to hang around, I'm just kind of waiting on them to win a game that they aren't supposed to. Okay, maybe that happens this Sunday. Maybe it happens against the Bills. Maybe it happens against the Lions. I don't know. But when you consistently hang around, eventually your opponents hand you a game. Okay, so if the Colts can steal one, if they can beat, the Lions or the Bills or the Vikings on Sunday, then they're going to have a great chance at making the playoffs. Are they going to win this division? No, they are not, because the Houston Texans are really good at football. Okay, they are. Like, they're currently the 2 seed in the AFC, right? Like, that is an undoubtedly good team, even though Stephon Diggs is going to miss some time with his knee injury. Nico Collins, he still isn't back. So is there a world where the Texans drop some games that they aren't supposed to? Sure, I guess, but I'm not even going to fantasize about it because there's no way the Colts are winning this division. But the playoffs are undoubtedly still in play. They can lose this game and the next one, because I forget that I believe they play the Bills. They either play the Bills or the Lions after this week. But from there, like, they have a ton of winnable games, right? They still have the Titans. They still have the Jags at home. Those feel like 2 games that they should win. Okay, so the season's not over, right? Because if the season was over, there'd be no discussion whatsoever about who was going to play quarterback. It would be Anthony Richardson the rest of the way. Okay, the Colts still have a chance at making the playoffs. They just have to win the games that they're supposed to. If they do that, then they're going to be fine, and they're going to make the playoffs, and then we'll all sit around the campfire, and we'll watch them get blown out by Buffalo or Baltimore. That's the road that we're currently headed down. Speaking of Baltimore and Buffalo, those are 2 of the best teams in the NFL. Every Tuesday, we do Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL. That segment comes your way here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a nice week here in about 20 minutes. Destin Adams of A to Z Sports. He covers the Colts for them. He's going to join the show. Should be a lot of fun. A lot of Anthony Richardson stuff going on today. All that good stuff. But we're going to take a short break from that. Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL after Week 8. And another week of the list being really difficult to make. So let's jump into it. Number 10, I've got the Los Angeles Rams right here. Jonathan, they're 3-4. They have a losing record. Yeah, they're also finally healthy. Right? When you looked at the Rams roster before the season started, it was one of the best in the NFL. Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua. Those four guys are going to score points. That doesn't even count Kyron Williams, one of the better running backs in the NFL. Okay, look, they scored 30 against a really good Vikings defense on Thursday. The defense is slowly getting better. They drafted some young guys. They signed a bunch of new guys in their secondary. But here's the thing, the defense for the Rams doesn't have to be great because the offense is going to score a bunch of points as long as it remains healthy, right? And that's been an issue for them. As long as the Rams continue to stay healthy, this is going to be one of the 10 best teams in the NFL. They still have a shot to win their division. They're only a game back of the Cardinals, who are currently winning that division, which is kind of nuts. So the Los Angeles Rams come in at 10. Number 9, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This defense, still amongst the best in the NFL. TJ Watt, the closer, finished that game off last night. Giants thought they were going to have a chance to tie. And then TJ Watt was like, no, let me just get a strip sack and then recover the fumble myself. Okay, Russell Wilson has made this offense better. I can't believe it, right? Justin Fields steps in. They're 4-2. And it's like, yeah, you got to roll with Justin Fields. And then Russell Wilson was like, no, let's ride. Even though I guess that's more of a Broncos thing. And he's come in. They've had back-to-back weeks where they've scored more points than they normally do. Najee Harris and Warren, they've both done a great job of running the football. Mike Tomlin, once again, just continues to find a way to win. It's just fun to watch. Like, when the Steelers are good, they're fun, man. Like, the defense that they run out there is really good, physical. It's just good, solid, tough football, which is what we all expect from Pittsburgh. Number 8, and dropping fast, the Minnesota Vikings. They've now lost back-to-back games. The defense has given up 30-plus points in back-to-back games. It's not a good look, right? But the real reason why I have them at 8 is because there's clearly a ceiling with Sam Darnold. Okay? Like, I'm not going to say everything has to be clicking for them to win games, but when they don't run the ball well, this isn't Mahomes, this isn't Josh Allen, this isn't Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, where you can be like, just throw the crap out of the ball and we're going to be fine. That's not an option with Minnesota. Okay, like Aaron Jones has to have success on the ground for the Vikings to have any chance to win these games. And that's not an insult for Sam Darnold, right? He's resurrected his career in a big way, but he's just not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination. And it's hard to win games when your quarterback is just another guy, and that's who Sam Darnold is. Number 7, the Houston Texans. Texans might struggle to score points. Okay, but C.J. Stroud seems to always make just enough plays to win, right? There were multiple third downs in that game against the Colts where he's running around like crazy and then finds Tank Dell or somebody for a big first down. And that's why they're 6-2. Okay, they've got a tough stretch of games coming up. No Stephon Diggs on Thursday night. No Nico Collins. So they're going to need a little more C.J. Stroud magic. We're going to see a lot of Tank Dell, which isn't a bad thing. And look, I've got all the faith in the world in C.J. Stroud. Okay, this Texans offense may not put up a ton of points, but I know that Stroud is going to make a play when he needs to make one. And it's hard not to like teams that have a quarterback that does that. Okay, this defense is good, okay, which isn't a surprise. DeMeco Ryans orchestrated one of the best defenses in the NFL when he was with the 49ers. This pass rush is much improved from last year. They get after everybody. Derek Stingley Jr. has quietly emerged as one of the better corners in the NFL. Okay, like Houston, legitimate on defense, and C.J. Stroud is going to continue to make just enough plays to win. Number 6, the Washington Commanders. Jane Daniels continues to play well. Okay, he didn't play great against Chicago. Okay, wasn't his best game by any stretch of the imagination. He was 21 of 38, which is not a great completion percentage, for 321 yards and a touchdown. But here's the thing, like, the Commanders put up over 400 yards of total offense against the Bears. It's the first time the Bears have allowed that all year. They moved the ball consistently, right? Because they, in addition to Jaden Daniels throwing and running the ball, Brian Robinson Jr. is a really good running back. Austin Eckler is a really good running back. Okay, so they've moved the ball incredibly well. The Lions offense, they're getting a ton of attention, and rightfully so. But this Commanders team has one of the best offenses in the NFL, and good coaching can change things. Dan Quinn has come in, and he's really helped that Washington defense that looked great against the Bears on Sunday. A team coming off a bye. Caleb Williams seemed like he was kind of starting to ease into the NFL, right? He'd had 4 pretty good games, and he comes out against Washington and looked like a rookie. So, number 5, I've got the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love hurt against the Jaguars on Sunday, but Malik Willis steps in and leads the Packers to a victory. Malik Willis is undefeated in the 3 games that he's appeared in this year. I think it's funny that, all those games were against the Colts, Titans, and Jaguars, all teams in his former division, right? Like, this offense didn't really miss a beat when he stepped in and he played, right? Then again, like I said, the competition was the Colts, Titans, and Jags. So the competition hasn't been great. But the thing about the Packers, and the reason why I'm so high on them, even though Jordan Love leads the NFL in interceptions thrown, they can rely on their defense to win games. Okay, like, this Packers defense is, dare I say, the most underrated in the NFL. They forced 18 turnovers this year. That leads the league. Matt LaFleur, good coach. You just know that whoever plays quarterback for the Packers is going to find success, because Matt LaFleur is the guy calling plays, and he's going to make things easier on his quarterback. Shane Steichen should probably check out and see how that works. So if Jordan Love misses some time, the Packers will be fine. Okay? Like, that's a good football team, very complete, good on both sides of the ball. And, I really like their coach, and they're borderline great when Jordan Love plays. Number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. They've now got a couple weird losses, right? They lost to the Raiders, and now they've lost to the Browns. To be fair, they weren't playing Deshaun Watson. They were playing Jameis Winston, right? So the Browns had a quarterback that could actually throw the football. Even though the Ravens have a couple weird losses, the team is obviously still great, right? Like, they're the 4th best team in the NFL. Okay? But with a loss to the Raiders and with a loss to the Browns, I'm a little more wary of them now. Like, what's wrong? Like, why didn't the Ravens beat a bad Raiders team? Why didn't they beat a bad Browns team? And the obvious answer is they're secondary, but then again, they've played against a lot of really good quarterbacks, so I hate being like, yeah, the Ravens secondary is bad because they couldn't slow down Patrick Mahomes, And so I don't really know what their issue is, but it needs to be fixed, obviously. Either way, though, this is still one of the better teams in the NFL. Like, if they played the Bills or the Chiefs and they won, I don't think anyone would be surprised. Speaking of the Bills, I have them 3. Yes, I have the Buffalo Bills ranked in front of the Ravens, even though the Ravens beat them 35-10 earlier in the year. So, Jonathan, how can you do that? The Ravens are clearly better. They beat them by 25. Well, at that time, the Bills didn't have Amari Cooper, and he makes this Bills offense way better. Okay. Also, the Bills are slowly getting healthier on the defensive side of the ball. They've now gone 3 straight games of giving up 20 points or less. Okay. They're better than they were a month ago. And the Ravens feel like the same team that they were a month ago, which isn't a bad thing, right? Like, that version of the Ravens is still really good. Okay. But the Bills just feel a little bit different after that trade for Amari Cooper and as they slowly get healthy on defense. So I've got the Buffalo Bills ranked as the 3rd best team in the NFL. Number 2, the Detroit Lions. I'm still concerned about Aiden Hutchinson being out for the year. Three of their last 4 games have been blowouts, and the one that wasn't was a road win against the Vikings. Okay, this offense is the best in the NFL right now. I mean, there's just no way around it. Jared Goff is just completing everything. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are running through every defense. The only concern with this Lions team is, Aiden Hutchinson being out and them no longer having a dominant pass rusher anymore. Okay, they've been fine without one so far, but they haven't really played any great quarterbacks since Aiden Hutchinson went out with that injury. Now, they could play Jordan Love this Sunday. Okay, Jordan Love is day-to-day with his injury. If he doesn't play, then the following week, the Lions play C.J. Stroud and the Texans, right? So within these next 2 weeks, we're going to figure out how this Lions defense looks when they play against one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Okay, that is kind of the last check mark that they kind of need to check off before I'm like, yeah, I really love this team, which I clearly do. I've got them ranked as the second best team in the NFL. That's because this offense has just been absolutely clicking over, the past month. So you can't ignore that. Jared Goff for MVP, as I predicted before the year started. Number one, do I really need to say it? It's the Chiefs. Okay, it doesn't need to be explained. They're now 7-0 after beating the Raiders on the road. I mean, look, this is one of the best defenses in the NFL. They just traded for another pass rusher, Josh Uche from the Patriots. He's got to be happy, right? Going from the Patriots to the Chiefs, it's incredible. That's got to be awesome, right? So, and then obviously, they have Mahomes, who's starting to kind of play better, played one of his better games on Sunday. He's still turning the ball over a little bit too much, but he's playing better. Travis Kelce is starting to get involved a little bit more. They made the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, right? They clearly needed another receiver, so now they're bringing him in. And I just don't know how anyone's going to beat this team, because at some point, Patrick Mahomes is going to figure it out, and he is going to look like the Patrick Mahomes that's won multiple MVPs and 3 Super Bowls, including the last 2. At some point, that's going to happen. And I just don't know how anyone's going to beat the Chiefs. It felt like they should have lost last year, right? Because they weren't as good, lack of weapons, all those things. And they figured out a way to win. And now this year, they're clearly better, but it still feels like they're giving teams opportunities because Patrick Mahomes isn't playing at the level that we're accustomed to Patrick Mahomes playing at. So once he gets it rolling, I don't know who's going to beat this Chiefs team. Now, there are some teams that teetered on the edge. I want to quickly address why I didn't rank them. The Eagles. Okay, the Eagles are 5-2. Okay, and I don't think they're very good, which doesn't make any sense because they're 5-2. But their last 3 wins are over the Browns, who aren't very good, the Giants, who aren't very good, and the Bengals, who aren't very good. Now, look, a win is a win, and you can only play who's on your schedule and all those things. But beating those teams doesn't prove that you're one of the best teams in the league. It doesn't, right? Of their other 2 wins, were against the awful Saints, and they beat the Packers in a weird game in Brazil on a bad field. Even though they're winning, I'm just kind of waiting for the bottom to drop out. Okay, it still feels like Nick Sirianni's going to get fired as soon as the Eagles have an excuse to do so, and I just find it hard to rank a team that's about to fire their head coach as soon as they have a reason. That points to the team having issues. And the best teams in the NFL don't have issues in their locker room. The Broncos fall in a similar boat as the Eagles. They just don't have very many impressive wins. They're 5-3, but they've beaten bad teams. Their 5 wins have come against the Panthers, terrible. The Saints, awful. The Raiders, the second worst team in the NFL. The Jets, absolutely terrible. And the Buccaneers, who were pretty average. Okay, Bo Nix appears to be a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL, but he's had some really bad games. So I think we're going to find out a lot more about the Broncos Sunday when they play the Ravens on the road, especially about Bo Nix, who, like I said, looks great in some games. And then he's got the game against the Jets where he threw for 70 yards or whatever it was. So he's a little up and down. I want to see a little more consistency from him before I rank the Broncos. The 49ers, they're 4-4. They beat the Cowboys. Congratulations. The Cowboys are bad. I just have a hard time ranking the 49ers as a top 10 team when Christian McCaffrey still hasn't played. Jordan Mason, their backup running back, got hurt on Sunday night. Brandon Ayuk's out for the year. And look, as great as Deebo Samuel and George Kittle are, Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey especially are very important pieces in this 49ers offense and operation. Okay, Kyle Shanahan, he can play call and coach around it and all those things, but like it's just harder to do that when you don't have Brandon Ayuk, who's one of the more explosive receivers in the NFL, and when you don't have Christian McCaffrey, who's the best running back in the NFL. So those are the three teams that are kind of teetering on the edge. I almost put the Bears in there as well, but Anthony Richardson, just like Bo Nix, 2 up and down, right? Like he looks good against the bad teams, but then struggles against the teams that are a bit better. So, we'll kind of see what happens there going forward. But yeah, that is Top 10 Tuesday, the best 10 teams in the NFL after week 8. Just to run through it one more time for you before we bring Destin Adams in. The Rams at 10, the Steelers at 9, the Vikings at 8, the Texans at 7, the Commanders at 6, the Packers at 5, the Ravens at 4, the Bills at 3, Lions at 2, the Chiefs at 1, with the Eagles, Broncos, and 49ers all kind of flirting with the edge of that top 10. When we come back here in about 4.5 minutes or so, Destin Adams of A to Z Sports, he covers the Colts for them, also does some NFL draft stuff. He's going to join the show. It's going to be a lot of stuff on Anthony Richardson. Should he be benched? What's the future if he is? All that kind of stuff is coming your way when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully your week is getting off to a good start. Destin Adams of A to Z Sports is joining me. He covers the Colts and the NFL draft for them. Destin, what's going on, man?
Going good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Colts lost on Sunday. Really sucks, but they're 4-4. This team still has a chance to make the playoffs, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the odds that came out today have them at a 56% chance. So definitely not the sky is falling that you'll see online over the last 48 hours.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. And speaking of things we see online, Shane Steichen has that quote yesterday where he says they're evaluating everything when asked if Anthony Richardson would start on Sunday. Are you worried about Richardson being benched?
Yeah, I mean, I feel at this point you have to be worried about it, right? I mean, you don't give that answer unless it's at least a discussion. I mean, I still think it was the ultimate coach speak move that may have been said at the worst possible time. But just to me, it doesn't make sense. It would not make sense in a efficiency manner to bench the quarterback that you have to figure out for sure if he's the guy. And I just don't see how you can, without a doubt, say, yeah, we have to move on from this guy, because to me, benching him is moving on. I don't see how you can close the door on him playing this season and it be a push the experiment off another year. So we'll have to wait and see. But for me, I've been operating in a I'll believe it when I see it type of mindset when it comes to them benching Richardson, just because I can't understand the logic there.
That's how I feel about it, joined by Destin Adams of A to Z Sports. He covers the Colts and the NFL draft for them. Look, from the time Steichen showed up, I think he's been pretty adamant about the idea of wanting to play Richardson. That's why Richardson was the starter his rookie year. That's why he's been the starter this year. My theory is Jim Irsay's like, I'm tired of watching my quarterback go 10 of 32. Can we please play Flacco? What do you kind of think about that theory?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been something speculated and thrown around there that potentially this is a decision that could be getting taken out of Steichen and Ballard's hand even, and maybe it's coming up from all the way to the top. And while I have no knowledge of that situation being the case, if it is the case, if you're Steichen and Ballard, I mean, I don't see how you can have all of that much confidence that this is your job long term, because if a decision that big is being taken out of your hands, I mean, one, if I was a head coach or GM, why would you want to be here? And two, if that decision is being taken out of your hands, your boss, in all sense of the word, doesn't trust you in the position that you're in to make those decisions. So I wouldn't feel like my seat is very safe where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think for Steichen, I think I'd be less concerned given the long statement that Jim Irsay made about Steichen, comparing him to Don Shula. And he's only been here for a year. I think for Ballard, though, I think your point's 1,000% right. He's been here a long time. And if after 8 years your boss doesn't trust you, then your head's probably on the chopping block. If the theory is true that Jim Irsay is the one who wants Flacco to play.
Yeah, and then we're gonna have to wait and see. We should know more come Wednesday when the practice field hits, and we get to see a little bit about who those starting reps go to and how it's announced. Because you can hide a little bit right now, but once you get on the practice field and see who it is taking those starting reps, it's going to become pretty evident pretty quickly. They have 3 practices to kind of shift it. But like I said earlier, I still feel like it just makes too much sense to continue to let Richardson build, get a full year of tape to where if you have to make that decision, it's something you can make in the offseason. You have time to actually build and make those decisions make sense. Because right now, entering week 9, Sunday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings, it does not make sense.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Joined by Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst for A to Z Sports, Destin Adams. You can follow him on Twitter at @Destin Adams. So when it comes to Flacco and Richardson, do you think Flacco's better right now? And what do you think the gap is one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word better is pretty subjective. I think that's what you you hear all the time, though, right? Like, Joe Flacco gives the team the best chance to win games right now. He's the better quarterback right now. I think there are things that Flacco is definitely better at. I think you can obviously look at the tape, look at what they've been able to do. Joe Flacco reads the defense better than Anthony Richardson does. Joe Flacco is a former Super Bowl MVP, 39 years old. He's been around the block here and there quite a bit at this point. Him being able to read a defense better than a 22-year-old quarterback who's played 10 NFL games and started 13 college games, I feel like that's pretty much common sense, right? That he would be better at that element. I think Joe Flacco is also better in terms of getting the ball out quick, finding those holes. Again, something you would expect a veteran quarterback to be better at. Now, I think there are elements that Anthony Richardson, when he's on the field, is a better option for this football team. I think whether it's Jonathan Taylor or it's not Jonathan Taylor, the running game is a way more dynamic element of this offense when you have a quarterback like Richardson that has to keep the defense honest. So I think that's a big element of it. I think Richardson's arm talent is still something that when Joe Flacco comes in for 75% of the game, that deep ball element is taken out of the game. We really only got to see it come back into it during that second start at the end of the game in that first start against Jacksonville in that late fourth quarter when the game fell out of hand. Then he starts taking those deep shots. I think you have to have a middle ground. I think you have to figure out how to use Anthony Richardson and how to use the deep ball but not rely on the deep ball. And I think that's what this offense is really struggling at and trying to find consistency. And if that consistency had been found, we're not having this discussion at all. But because it hasn't, it has to be talked about.
I'm with you, joined by Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst of A to Z Sports, Destin Adams. So you talked about play calling and throwing the ball deep and all that other kind of stuff. I think the most revealing stat from Sunday, what for me at least, was Anthony Richardson attempted less passing attempts, 10 yards or less from the line of scrimmage than he did 20 plus yards down the field. Like there were way too many deep shots. And I felt like, yesterday, the main topic around the Colts should have been Shane Steichen, and the play calling wasn't exactly beneficial to Anthony Richardson. But the main storyline was Anthony Richardson taking him out on that 3rd and goal. Were you more upset on Sunday about the play calling from Steichen or Anthony Richardson taking himself out of the game for a play?
Yeah, I mean, I thought both of those things are bigger issues than how Anthony Richardson performed in week 8, right? Him tapping out on that 3rd and goal, you can spin it however you want. You're going to hear every answer given, every political way you can spin it with these players and the coaches when they're asked about it in these press conferences. It can't happen. That is the underlying fact that you're going to hear in every single one of them. They've said it. No matter what answer they give you, that's how they end it. It can't happen. It doesn't matter if Joe Flacco comes in and just hands it off. It doesn't matter if the plan would have been for Anthony Richardson to hand it off. It was a 1-score divisional game, 3rd and goal. You're in the goal line. You need a score. It has to be you out there. Now, if it was a situation to where he had the wind knocked out of him on the hit and he had to get taken out injury-wise, obviously that's a different situation. Tapping out because of saying you're tired after the game, it simply can't happen. Now, the play calling, I mean, I felt during the live game action there were definitely not enough quick hitters called in the offense, and that's why we saw so many deep shots. And then when I watched the tape back, there were a few instances that Richardson bypassed the short option to where it was given to him. But too often during that game, we saw 4 or 5 options go vertical, not leaving anyone in those quick, having any of these speedy options, whether it's the running back, whether it's a Josh Downs type, filling the hole to where the blitz comes, especially with how often Houston was blitzing. I don't care who's in at quarterback this week. You're going up against a Minnesota Vikings defense that blitzes more than anyone in the NFL. And if you go out there with Flacco, if you go out there with Richardson, and you do not have a quick hitter to try and combat this blitz, it's going to go poorly no matter who it is.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about the game. Joined by Destin Adams, Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst for A to Z Sports. Follow him on Twitter at the Destin Adams. So yeah, I'm completely with you. Like watching that game on Sunday, Anthony Richardson gets sacked 5 times. He's pressured on 64% of his dropbacks, and they ran one screen, and that was on the second play of the game. And so I'm with you. I'd like to see a little bit more quick hitting stuff. I'm curious about the Joe Flacco thing, because I think that me included in this, we've kind of narrowed it down to like planning for the future, planning for right now. How do the other guys in the locker room, though, impact the decision? Like, could Shane Steichen potentially lose the veterans in the locker room if he continues to play Richardson?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about this Colts locker room that's a little bit different than a lot of the league, and it was something that they were criticized for this offseason, is how much they kept these guys in-house. How much of this roster has been on this roster for multiple seasons now. And because of that, they've been a part of those quarterback carousels. They saw another quarterback, another veteran come in that door week one every year that wasn't there the year prior. And they saw how that not being able to build any stability at the quarterback position, you could get hot for a few weeks at a time. You could be the story on all the national networks because of that hot start or that hot stretch, but not having stability, it bites you at some point in the season. And because of that, that's why the Richardson pick is made. That's why he gets out there and plays earlier than expected, because they knew their best chance to contend long term is to find that young type of quarterback, develop them in-house, and move forward in that direction. And that's Anthony Richardson. So the fact of the situation is these guys know why going to a Joe Flacco situation would just be setting up to be exactly where they've been countless times before next season. So I have a hard time believing that's what the locker room wants, because they've had to go through this so many different times. If this was another situation and another team with different players to where that wasn't the case, maybe that would make sense. In Carolina, for example, maybe those veterans led a decision for why Andy Dalton's playing and Bryce Young isn't. I don't feel like that's probably a situation going on in Indy, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. Joined by Destin Adams, Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst for A to Z Sports. Yeah, and the other thing is, like, my thing is the difference between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson, like, isn't that big? Like, I feel like the ceiling for the Colts, if they play Joe Flacco, is 10-7 or 9-8, and I feel like the ceiling with Anthony Richardson is 10-7 or 9-8, and those are depending on who plays quarterback. Even if the record finishes at 10-7 or 9-8. It means two completely different things. You know, like if Joe Flacco goes 10-7, then we're just like, all right, cool. Who's the next guy to play quarterback? Whereas if Anthony Richardson figures it out and he goes 10-7, then you're like, great. Like, this could potentially be our franchise guy. And if he doesn't get better and you want to move on from him, then you have a really low pick and you can potentially draft the next guy. So I'm completely with you in that regard. And obviously, like, Richardson has to get better. Why do you think he's struggled so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first off, just to the Flacco-Richardson situation, I am a believer that while Joe Flacco raises the floor of this team, like, to me, I feel like a Joe Flacco-led team, I feel like you're winning 8 games no matter what, at least, like, at minimum. Now, Richardson at the floor, if he plays his worst football at a consistent rate, like, you could bottom out a little bit. You could be a 7-win, 6-win team just because of some of those mistakes that a rookie quarterback can make, right? Now, I think where I disagree with some of the people on the Joe Flacco is a better option to win you games is because I think the best chance that this Colts roster has at winning important games, and I'm not talking about winning a game in week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10, but the best shot that this roster has is winning potential late season, regular season games, at winning playoff environment games and moving forward in the playoffs is by Richardson hitting his groove and playing that high caliber football that we have seen in flashes. We've seen his ability to make big plays. We saw it in some of the incompletions he had against this last week against Houston. That throw to Adonai Mitchell was beautiful. And there are very few quarterbacks that are going to fit it in that small hole that he did. And if Mitchell gets that second foot down, that highlight's being played everywhere this week. Instead, it's an afterthought. But to me, that is the best chance this Colts roster has at actually contending, is Richardson hitting those things at a more consistent rate, which he's only going to do by playing right now through the struggles. And the reason he struggled is because like I said earlier, he's a guy who the Colts drafted at 4th overall, had 13 career college starts in 3 seasons at Florida, and has only started 10 games in the NFL, is 22 years old, and is in a situation where he needs to play to be able to iron out a lot of these kinks that are in there. His footwork, for example, it needs to be more consistent, needs to get better. And the ability to read a defense needs to get better. And I just don't think those are things that you're going to see drastic improvements in him unless he's on the field making those mistakes right now that we're all going to be talking about and we all don't want to see, but they have to happen because for 90% of NFL quarterbacks, they happen early in their career. I do think the C.J. Strouds, the Jaden Daniels, the Patrick Mahomes after sitting on the bench for 1 year, coming in and just lighting up the league right away in their first starts, I think it has broken fans' perspective on young quarterbacks a little bit because the majority of them come in, they have their struggles, and they have to overcome them to become good NFL quarterbacks. We've seen them countless times with a lot of quarterbacks right now that we view as the best in the league.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on the broken expectations we have for young quarterbacks. Joined by Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst for A to Z Sports, Destin Adams. Even just like for Colts fans, like the last 2 quarterbacks that they drafted really high were Peyton Manning, one of the best quarterbacks ever, and then Andrew Luck, who was pretty good immediately, right? And so, like, this is the first time that Colts fans are having to go through this rough process, because that's what it is. Just talk to Bears fans. They're going through it right now with Caleb Williams, of like the development of a young quarterback. 2 more questions for you, Destin, and I will let you go. Do you think the NFL regrets flexing the Colts and Vikings game into primetime?
I mean, it's a good question. I think, these are 2 teams that have playoff aspirations, and I think that's probably a big element of it. Taking the Jaguars off of primetime and putting a game that may have just a little bit more weight to it. I still think it probably is a better environment for them than having to put that Jacksonville game on primetime. I'm also curious to see if a reason they did this was to make sure the Colts kept a primetime game just in case the Colts-Jets is one of these Jets primetime games down the stretch they want to pull off primetime, because this Jets team is only getting worse, and they have a lot of primetime games left on the schedule. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see a couple of those taken off the schedule, and maybe the Colts are one of them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I just thought of this question, so I'm actually going to ask you 2 more from here. Do you think that if Jim Irsay is making the call of Flacco, do you think part of it is the Colts are about to play on national television and he doesn't want his team to be embarrassed if Anthony Richardson comes out and is, 8 of 28 again or whatever it is?
I mean, maybe that is the thought process. Again, speculating if Irsay is the one leading these decisions. Now, personally, my reaction to anyone, like, if that is how he views it, like, why did you take this guy 4th overall? Like, he said publicly that he understood that the early stages of this may be a little ugly. Like, he's been through this. He saw Peyton Manning struggle his first year or 2 in the NFL. He knows that young quarterbacks struggle a lot in this league. So to me, if you allow the public view and these talk shows scrutinizing Richardson's performances and the fear of him playing poorly on a national stage, like, to me, this may not be the business for you anymore. Like, if that type of mindset is going to dictate the decisions you make, to me, it feels like that's a very weak-minded way to look at it, and just not something that you should be allowing to dictate football decisions for a team that you're running. So again, that's just speculating on if that is the case for him. No idea if this has anything to do with Mr. Irsay, of course, but I just do not see a way that if your brain is moving and working in that fashion and this type of decision, that you should be running a football team.
Joined by Destin Adams, Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst for A to Z Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at the Destin Adams. Last question for you, and I will let you go. Do you like the Colts' chances on Sunday?
It'll be an interesting one. I mean, this Vikings team, they've definitely taken a step back the last couple of weeks from what we saw early on, where people were questioning if this was one of the best teams in the league. This is going to be one of the best receiver duos they play all year. Obviously, the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle situation had no Tua, which hurt them, but they played really well against that duo. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are a very, very good receiver duo in this league. And they're going to be a very big test for these young secondary players. And then Sam Darnold's playing good football, but the last couple of weeks we've seen a little bit more of what Sam Darnold looked like earlier in his career. And this defense is aggressive. And you have to be able to take that and make that an advantage for you. They're going to blitz you often, and they're going to blitz you heavy. You have to be able to counteract that, and they're not going to stop it, whether that's the run game they use to beat it, whether that's using those quick hitters that we talked about earlier and finding those openings, and as a result have a lot of open field in front of you. You have to take them being aggressive and them trying to almost scare you out of big plays and almost create them out of things that look small. And because of that, I think the Colts have a better shot than people think they do. I actually think they have a better shot if it's Richardson and not Flacco, especially in this game where that much pressure is going to get brought. I think having that element in the backfield is going to be major. So we're going to have to wait and see who the starter is. But until proven otherwise, I'm going to operate as if Anthony Richardson is going to be under center.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the mobility aspect of it, because even against Houston, right? Like Richardson was sacked 5 times. If Flacco had been back there, it'd have been closer to 8 or 9. So I think you're exactly right when talking about how much the Vikings blitz. So Destin, thanks for your time, man. You were great.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
You got it. See you. That is Destin Adams. You can follow him on Twitter at the Destin Adams. Great dude, does a great job covering the Colts. You can read his stuff at AtoZSports.com. He's on the Colts beat, also does some NFL draft stuff as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, the conversation. Actually, no, it doesn't. When we come back here in 4 minutes, we're going to talk IU football. Let's get a little positivity in here. There's some issues arising for college football and the College Football Playoff Committee, and they're pretty obvious when you look at Indiana's resume. I'm going to talk about that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your week. It's Tuesday. Indiana football doesn't play till Saturday, which is kind of sad, but I am going to talk about them here right quick. I was looking at the Indiana football resume last night because, the AP poll upsets me because Indiana's ranked 13th. They should undoubtedly be ranked higher. They're undoubtedly one of the 12 best teams in all of college football. And, so I'm sitting down last night. I'm comparing Indiana's resume to other teams' resumes, right? And when you're comparing that, it's really simple, right? You're looking at who did you beat and who did you lose to, right? It's simple at its core. It can get complicated, but for the most part, evaluating college football resumes and who deserves to be in the top 12 is a relatively simple thing. And after looking at Indiana's wins and 0 losses, I don't know how they're not in the top 12, right? When you look at their 2 best wins, their 2 best wins are against Nebraska and Washington, right? And obviously they don't have any bad losses because there's none to be found. Nebraska is clearly a good football team. They beat Colorado, who's good. They hung with Ohio State on Saturday on the road in Columbus. Like that was an impressive showing. They beat Washington, who's got wins over Michigan, and Washington is clearly a good offensive football team. So like their wins are solid. They're not great, right? They don't have a win over Texas A&M or anybody like that. But when you compare them to the other teams that are ranked around them, their resume is better. Okay, Clemson doesn't have a good win. Clemson's best wins are over Virginia and NC State. Both of those teams are 4-4 and simply not good at football. They don't have any bad losses, Clemson, but their one game against top 12 competition, they got beat 34-3 by Georgia. They have no business being ranked in front of Indiana. When it comes to Iowa State, they've got, a good win, right? They beat Iowa. That's a good win. Beat them 20-19. Their second best win, though, was against 4-4 West Virginia. It was not very good. And, Iowa State's undefeated. So, they obviously don't have any bad losses, right? So, Iowa State shouldn't be ranked in front of Indiana because they just don't have as many good wins as Indiana does. They also haven't blown out their opponents in the same fashion that Indiana has. A&M is ranked 10th. A&M should be ranked in front of Indiana because they simply have more good wins. Okay, they should honestly be ranked in the top 6 because they're undefeated in SEC play. And the fact that they're ranked 10th is ridiculous. Whichever team sits atop the SEC should be ranked higher than 10th. BYU, this is another team. They're ranked 9th in the country. They should be ranked in front of Indiana, right? They've got wins against Kansas State and SMU. Both of those teams are currently ranked in the top 20. And you're probably like, Jonathan, why are you bringing up college football resumes? We get it. Indiana should be in the top 12, all this stuff. And the reason why I bring up these resumes is not only because Indiana deserves to be in the top 12, right? Because the resume is more impressive than Clemson's and it's more impressive than Iowa State's. I also bring them up because the first college football playoff committee rankings come out a week from today, November 5th. I know that's why everyone has November 5th circled on their calendar. They want to see what the college football playoff rankings look like for the first time. And I just have so many questions as to how this college football playoff committee is going to figure out who belongs in the top 12. Okay, I was not a fan of, the expansion of college football. I don't like that the playoff is 12 teams deep. I think that's too many. The number should be 6. Okay? Should be six teams. The top 6 ranked teams in the country, the 1 and 2 seeds, get a bye. Okay? That is firmly what I've believed this entire time. Okay? Now, this wasn't originally an issue of mine. Originally, I was pretty excited about this. I now have an issue with the expansion of the conferences. Paul, like, Jonathan, why are you complaining so much today? Let me tell you. The size of all the conferences is clearly an issue because not everyone is playing enough tough games. How am I supposed to know if Clemson's any good when they play one game against Georgia and then their next 11 games are against sub 500 teams. How am I supposed to decipher whether or not Clemson's good at football? Am I supposed to be like, oh, well, they blew out Wake Forest, they must be great? No, like that's not a realistic way of figuring these things out, right? You know, Indiana has like I guess a bit of a break, right? Because they play Ohio State on the road, and it's like if they win that game, then you know that they're good. But like if Indiana gets blown out on the road in Columbus, let's say that they get beat, you know, I don't know, 38 to 14, right? But they blow out all the bad teams on their schedule. Like, is Indiana a top 12 team? I don't know. Like, do you rank them in front of a team like LSU that would have significantly better wins on their resume, but more losses? Like, how is the college football playoff committee going to weigh all of this? Okay. Because not everyone is playing tough games. Okay. Like they're not, right? Like, look at the Indiana schedule. Penn State schedules the exact same way, right? They played Illinois, who's I think's ranked 23rd, and they play Ohio State this week. Every other game they play is against a bad football team, right? And when the conferences were smaller, this wasn't the case, right? Like you actually had to go play the best teams in your conference every single year. And when you look at how, you know, the schedules are going to rotate, like there's going to be years where Ohio State doesn't play anybody good. Like that is a real legitimate possibility, right? Just like how Indiana this year isn't playing anybody good except for Ohio State. And it's the same thing with Penn State. They aren't playing anybody good except for Ohio State. Like, how is the college football playoff committee going to rank teams, right? Because if this is just these are the 12 best records in the country, so they make it in, then you're going to have a major issue emerge in how teams schedule non-conference games. The College Football Playoff Committee should prioritize wins. Okay? Like if LSU's 10-2, let me pull up their schedule here real quick. With multiple good wins, they should be ranked in front of a team like Indiana if Indiana goes 11-1 with a loss to Ohio State, because Indiana just won't have any impressive wins on their resume. LSU's currently 6-2, and they're 14th in the country, right? And if they win out, they'll have a win over Alabama and over Ole Miss. Like those two wins will be better than anything Indiana has on their resume if they lose to Ohio State. I really hope that the College Football Playoff Committee puts an emphasis on who you beat as opposed to, oh, you went 12-0 and your best win was against unranked Wake Forest, right? Or whoever it is coming out of the ACC. That needs to be weighted more than, oh, you didn't lose to anybody. That's awful. Congratulations, right? That is going to be the best way forward, because I think that the last thing that college football fans want, and certainly the last thing I want, is for a team to make the playoff and get their doors blown off. Okay. And when you look at, you know, a team like LSU, right, there's just the easiest example, right? Like with a win over Ole Miss, and if they beat Alabama this week, or that might be, yeah. I think that's this week. I don't know. It's the 9th, whenever that is. Like with a win over Ole Miss and Alabama, you prove that you can beat some of the better teams in the country, right? Like that is what I want for these final 12 teams. 12 teams that have proven that they can beat the best teams in the country, right? Because that is what's going to give us the best games possible, not, you know, Clemson, who got their doors blown off by Georgia and then beat a bunch of bad ACC teams. Okay, that is not what I want. I want the best teams in the country, and I think that you should have to prove that in order to be ranked in the top 12. So that first edition of the College Football Playoff Rankings come out November 5th, Tuesday night. I know we're all looking forward to the release of those rankings. That's why everyone has November 5th circled on their calendar. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Shane Steichen stirred up Colts Twitter with a quote, and I'll play that for you when we come back here in 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice start to your week. Thanks for tuning in no matter how you're tuning in. Shane Steichen decided to just make everybody freak out in the sports world yesterday when he was asked about whether or not Anthony Richardson would be the starting quarterback.
Is he starting Sunday?
We are evaluating everything.
Oh, no, they're evaluating everything. Joe Flacco fans rejoice. Joe Flacco fans are so excited right now. They're like, oh, can't wait to see the 39-year-old quarterback with the mobility of an old rusty chair play quarterback for my Indianapolis Colts. And then, you know, your Anthony Richardson fans are like, oh, no, the sky's falling. What are we going to do? We're supposed to be patient. Oh, no. Right? Like, you've got these two completely different responses. And speaking of responses, that response from Shane Steichen when he was asked the question about whether or not Anthony Richardson would be the starter is, not the normal response that he's given, right? Usually he's very affirming of, no, Anthony Richardson's our guy. That's the guy that we want to see. And like I was saying, Flacco fans are excited. Richardson fans are upset. But here's the truth of the matter, right? Shane Steichen said that, right? He's asked, is Richardson going to start? And he said, we're evaluating everything. And that was the only thing that got thrown out on Twitter. That's the only part of social media that we've seen from the press conference. Thankfully, Chappie followed up and he asked for a little bit of clarification on what Shane Steichen meant when he said that everything was under evaluation.
I don't want to read too much into what you said, but when you said you're evaluating everything on him starting Sunday, is there a question that he starts Sunday in Minnesota?
Like I said, we're evaluating everything, not just the quarterback, everything. Like, we all got to be better. I mean, we're sitting at 500. And, I think, looking back at what we've done, there's a whole bunch of areas that we can improve on. I'm not just talking about the quarterback. I'm talking about everything. And we got to be better moving forward.
That was Indianapolis Colts Shane Steichen there explaining what it means by they're evaluating everything. And it means exactly what they said. Like, they're obviously evaluating the quarterback spot because Anthony Richardson hasn't been very good. They're evaluating the receivers because they didn't catch the ball on Sunday. They're evaluating the offensive line because they didn't block on Sunday. Right? And hopefully they're also evaluating the play calling because that was a major issue. From a personnel standpoint, I don't think the Colts are going to change much. Okay, because it's week 9 and you have who you have. And at this point, if you don't know who your best players are, then that is an issue in and of itself. This feels to me, I could be wrong, like Shane Steichen just trying to grab his team's attention, trying to grab the attention of Anthony Richardson, right? Because Anthony Richardson needs to be better, right? And the Colts as a whole need to be better. Okay, receivers need to catch the ball. Offensive line needs to block. Anthony Richardson needs to make throws. Okay, like all of those things have to happen. The only guys on this Colts offense that don't need to be better are Josh Downs and Jonathan Taylor. Okay, so when it comes to the changes that we're going to see the Colts make, I don't think it's going to be in personnel. Okay, where I do think we're going to see the changes, however, is in the way that Shane Steichen calls plays. If we see any major adjustments from the Colts this week and for the rest of the year, it will be in play calling. Everyone, including me, is upset at the play calling from these past couple of games. Okay, I have gone to bat for Shane Steichen. I think he's awesome, right? He was great with Justin Herbert in San Diego, right? He was great with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Okay, Shane Steichen isn't dumb. Okay, I was watching Monday Night Countdown last night. I heard Jason Kelce, one of the best centers in the history of the NFL, a first ballot Hall of Famer, all those things. I heard him say that Shane Steichen's the best play caller he ever played for. Okay, so Shane Steichen is not dumb. He's going to watch the film, and he's going to see things and realize how he could be better in terms of how he's calling plays. Okay, so I expect to see some sort of adjustment on that front from Shane Steichen. Okay, because I refuse to think that he's dumb. Okay, I know there's a portion of people out there who think that Joe Flacco should be the starter. Okay, and they think that because he was great against a bad Jaguars team. Okay, but let's just be honest about this. The Colts aren't that much better with him at quarterback. They aren't, right? And he's not going to. I would be surprised if he started on Sunday against the Vikings. I fully expect to see Anthony Richardson be the starter. And part of that is because of this quote from Shane Steichen yesterday at his press conference when he was asked about developing young quarterbacks. Do you start them or do you sit them?
Yeah, I think it could go either way, right? I mean, there's certain guys that, throw guys into the fire early, and there's other guys that let them sit back and watch. So obviously playing, like I've said before, the more you play, the more you learn at that position. But is there benefit sometimes in sitting back and watching? Yeah, of course there is. And so those are just, conversations that go on in the off season and constantly going on through NFL football teams.
Shane Steichen right there talking about whether or not you start or you sit young quarterbacks. So it seems like Shane Steichen is a believer in playing young quarterbacks early, right? And we not only have that quote of him saying that, but we have evidence of him doing it. Who was the starting quarterback for the Colts last year? Anthony Richardson, until he got hurt, obviously. Who's been the starting quarterback this year for the Colts? Anthony Richardson, right? Through all the bad that has happened. Okay, it is clear to me that Shane Steichen is a believer in playing young quarterbacks. Okay, and look, I don't think we're going to see Flacco on Sunday, and that's going to upset some Colts fans. But this is the reality of it. The Colts' ceiling with Anthony Richardson is 9-8 or 10-7. The ceiling for the Colts with Joe Flacco is 9-8 or 10-7. Right, and there's a major difference between those ceilings being reached. Right, let's say that the Colts pull the plug. They're like, we're done with Anthony Richardson. Let's throw in Joe Flacco, right? And the Colts go 10-7 with Joe Flacco. They make the playoffs. They get their doors blown off in the first round by the Ravens or the Bills or the Chiefs. And then, from there, they move off Anthony Richardson. They trade him for a 6th-round pick that gets spent on a corner. And then Ballard's like, we got the steal of the draft. We got him in the 6th round, too. It's amazing. And then in 3 years, Colts fans are super upset and complaining about how the Colts continue to sit around 9-8 and 10-7 and how they don't have a young quarterback to build around. It's the same scenario Colts fans were complaining about 3, 4, and 5 years ago when they were running Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan out to play quarterback. Nobody enjoyed that. Nobody. Okay. And eventually the Colts missed on Matt Ryan and they had a chance to draft Anthony Richardson. Let me ask you a question. The Washington Commanders, as of today, they are the 2 seed in the NFC. They're sitting at 6-2. Do you know why the Commanders are good this year? Because they went 4-13 last year and they got to draft Jaden Daniels. Okay? So even if Anthony Richardson's bad, they need to play him. The best way forward for the Colts is Anthony Richardson. Because one of 2 things are going to happen. One, he's going to get better. Maybe the Colts go 10-7. Right? And if that happens, then you can sit back and be like, he got better, became more accurate. He started to complete some tougher passes. We went 10-7. Maybe he is the future of our franchise. So that could happen. That'd be the best case scenario for the Colts. Or he's not going to get better. Okay? Or Anthony Richardson is going to continue to struggle. And if that happens, then you're bad. You go, 6-11, 5-12, whatever it is, and then you can take that high draft pick and draft another quarterback that hopefully turns out better than Anthony Richardson. This is how the NFL works. If you consistently go 9-8, then you sit somewhere between the 15th and the 20th pick. And guess what you can't do with the 15th or 20th pick or any pick in between there? You can't draft a franchise quarterback. Okay, the last quarterback that got selected in that range was Kenny Pickett, and he's the 3rd-string quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay? The answer is Anthony Richardson. For better or for worse, playing Joe Flacco gets you nothing. Congratulations. You won week 9 against the Minnesota Vikings. Woohoo! In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't do anything for you. Okay? And I know people are like, oh, well, what if he loses the locker room? What about the veterans? So those guys are going to play hard no matter what. No matter who's playing quarterback. Every player in the NFL plays hard. You know why? Because they're constantly competing for their next contract. Okay? Because Josh Downs knows that if he doesn't play well, then guess what? That's going to impact the dollar amount of his next contract. So whether Anthony Richardson is out there, or Joe Flacco is out there, or I'm out there, everybody else is going to play hard because they would like to earn another contract and play football in the NFL for as long as possible. That's the reality of it. The other thing is, when you draft a guy 4th overall, you owe it to yourself to figure out whether or not he's the guy. Okay? They do. Anthony Richardson started 10 games in his career. He's only finished like 7 of them. That is simply not a big enough sample size. I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson on Sunday because of that, and because, the Colts know that the best way forward, the only way to build for the future is with Anthony Richardson, whether it's because he's bad and you get to draft your hopefully next great quarterback, or he winds up getting better and then you already have your franchise quarterback. That is the best way forward. The only way that we see Joe Flacco on Sunday is if Jim Irsay decided to insert himself into this situation, okay, which, wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, because owners meddle all the time, and usually teams that have owners that meddle, those teams are usually bad. Just look at the Jets, right? The owner out there, got in there like, hey, we need Rodgers. I want to win right now. Hassan Reddick, blank check, whatever you want. And then they lost to the Patriots. Seriously, the only way we see Joe Flacco on Sunday is if Jim Irsay decides to insert himself into this equation and says, you know what? I'm tired of being patient. I'm tired of watching 10 of 32. I'm tired of turning on ESPN in the morning and people questioning, the quarterback that we have running out there. I want to see Joe Flacco. And look, that's a real possibility. Jim Irsay could undoubtedly insert himself and change what the Colts are doing, right? I hope that's not what he's doing, because that's not the best thing for the Colts. But, he might do that. And, and if they run Joe Flacco out there, then the Colts will go 9-8, 10-7, make the playoffs, get blown out big time by whoever they play. And, and then Colts fans will be mad about that. It'll be great. Can't wait. Something else that I can't wait for, the World Series, right? Freddie Freeman's just on fire right now. It's incredible, right? Gotta love everything that he's doing. And, it's great. It's great. So, Freddie Freeman on fire. He's at a home run in 5 straight World Series games. It's been just fantastic to watch. This Dodgers team, man, they're loaded. Okay, like the pitching has been spot on. Freddie Freeman's freaking drenched in flames right now. Like, the dude's just, every time he swings the bat, you just expect the ball to leave the yard. And then, like, the pitching, like, they've just got so much pitching. And then you look at the Yankees, and it's just kind of like, could they play any worse right now? And it's great, because I can't stand the Yankees. I don't know anyone who likes them. But they just, they're bad. They're not bad. That's not true. But, they were almost shut out last night. Verdugo hit a 2-run homer in the bottom of the ninth to make it 4-2. But, I mean, that's really it. Stanton got thrown out at home plate. Not great. It's brutal watching this series. And it's not because the Yankees are bad. It's just the Dodgers are incredibly good at baseball. It appears to be, the best roster in Major League Baseball. They appear to clearly be the best team. They're up 3-0 in the series. Freddie Freeman, like I said, is just on absolute fire right now. So it's good. It's fun to watch, the World Series. Hopefully the Dodgers win tonight and the Yankees get swept. And I hope all the Yankees fans are absolutely miserable after that happens. That would make my day better. It would. So that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Got a great show lined up tomorrow. Tony East, who covers the Pacers, he's going to join me tomorrow at 11. Pacers off to a slow start. They're 1-4. Halliburton not playing very well. People are panicking. They shouldn't panic, because we're 5 games into the year. Like, we're 5 games into the year. Like, let's relax a little bit, okay? Like, they're going to get it figured out. They're really talented. Carlisle's going to figure out the rotation here at some point. The loss last night to the Magic. Sometimes really good players have great nights, and that's what happened. Paolo Banchero's a beast. That dude's so freaking good. And he went for 50. And sometimes that happens. The Pacers didn't even defend him that poorly. They were throwing double teams his way, and he just played really well. And sometimes that happens. 5 minutes from now, the Dan Dockett Show starts. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon. Head over to Indie Sports Ticket on YouTube. Subscribe. Watch the stream there tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you tomorrow at 10.